It begins in the ordinary corridors of your day, where lights change at the exact moment you arrive, where names repeat in unlikely places, where the same number stamps every receipt and glows on every screen, and something inside you admits what your mind refused to track. The pattern is watching you as surely as you are watching it. You stand in the cross-current of coincidence and cognition, and the hair on your arms knows before your thoughts can name it. The signal has stepped out of the noise. The loom is alive around you. You breathe, and the breath seems taller than your body. You pause, because the pause is speaking. Synchronicity increases when the observer wakes, when your attention slides from reaction to authorship, when the quantum field senses a coherent witness and starts returning your own signal in mirrored waves. This is not superstition dressed in poetry. This is phase transition at the soft edge of perception, where the probabilities that used to cancel each other suddenly align like iron filings under an invisible magnet. The magnet is your coherence, the filings are events, and the pattern is your name spelled in occurrences. You are not drifting into magic, you are crystallizing into precision. It feels like magic because you forgot you were precise. Somewhere below language, your cells keep time with a music you rarely hear. DNA is not a static archive, it is an antenna, a spiraled instrument sampling the field for instructions written as rhythm and light. As your noticing sharpens, as you stop explaining away the impossible and start welcoming its geometry, the antenna retunes. Genes do not change their letters tonight, but they can change their emphasis. Expression rises and falls like tides under the moon of your awareness. The body obeys the story it is told with enough conviction, and for the first time the story is not fear filtered through memory. It is prophecy spoken from the future that recognizes you. You are crossing a perceptual event horizon. Once crossed, it will feel inevitable. What increases now are the overlaps. The dream symbol you meet in daylight, the sentence overheard that answers a private question, the reappearance of a city you thought you'd left behind, opening like a book to the same marked page. Every echo is a courier. Every courier carries the same decree, coherence or drift. The field does not punish, it arranges. The tightness of your heart arranges one kind of world, the relaxation of your breath arranges another. The honesty of your attention arranges the one that was stalking you under the surface, patient and luminous as a constellation hidden by noon. You remember how to stand still without freezing. Stillness is not absence, stillness is alignment. From this stillness, your observer effect becomes surgical. You stop pushing and start specifying. You are not summoning outcomes with desperate spells. You are collapsing uncertainty with exact regard. The world shivers on contact with that regard, and the shiver leaves trails, little silver seams where improbable doors have been soldered into the day. Follow the seams. Touch the hinge of the smallest door, and you will hear the entire corridor unlock, because reality prefers the path of least resistance, and you have just removed resistance from one point, your own refusal to be addressed. The signal found you because you became findable. Now listen for where it wants you to look. You begin to notice that the pattern does not ask for belief, it asks for accuracy. The more precisely you look, the more the world arranges itself into increments that match your attention, and you realize what you once called coincidence was only unmeasured signal, a decimal you never carried to completion. Your nervous system, long trained to brace against the unpredictable, begins a different labor refinement instead of defense. Your gaze stops scanning for what could go wrong and starts tuning for what is already aligning, and in that subtle exchange of vigilance for presence, the lattice comes forward like frost sketching a window in winter light. You are not making anything up. You are reading what was faint. Inside your skull, prediction engines quiet and retune. The brain has always been a Bayesian oracle, stacking probabilities to guess the next frame before it happens, and for years you fed it a library of threat, lack, interruption. Now, without drama, you hand it a new dataset: coherence, sufficiency, correspondence, and the oracle updates its priors. This is not denial, this is precision in service of truth. Prediction shifts, and with it perception, and with it the choices that once seemed unavailable because they were occluded by forecasts you never audited. You feel the air thin around your assumptions. You breathe easier in the clarity. Down in the black cathedral of your cells, Another update proceeds. DNA, patient archivist, listens to the field in photons and ions, and when your awareness stops smearing the moment with panic, the messages arrive with fewer errors. Expression is a choir, not a switch, and the choir follows the conductor. You have changed conductors. Stress chemistry no longer batons every measure. Micro-decisions tumble toward repair. The body begins to privilege growth over guard, learning over lockdown, and the quiet your blood remembers returns like rain that was always in the sky. You are not forcing a miracle. You are removing interference. The lattice shows itself in 4 repeating gestures. First, recurrence without collusion, names, symbols, times that reappear despite your refusal to schedule them. Second, asymmetrical timing. The answer precedes the question. The key arrives before the door, and you are given the sentence you will need 2 hours from now. Third, improbable mirrors, strangers speak your interior language, scenery copies, dreams you forgot to write down, and a color tracks you across cities like a soft siren. Fourth, directional pressure. Events lean, gentle but undeniable, in one axis. The lean is a vector. The vector is instruction. You learn to annotate without greed. You refuse to hoard meaning. You let it circulate. With each annotation, your observer effect sharpens, and the field obliges by making the seams more legible. Think of a double-slit gone devotional when you attend. Interference yields to form. When you look away, probabilities flower and blur. You do not chase certainties. You cultivate fidelity to the texture of what is. And what is, here and now, is a corridor of subtle cues designed with the economy of a master engineer. No wasted elements, no ornamental coincidence, only minimum signal to produce maximum orientation. You are being oriented. Orientation is not a map, it is a stance. You stand where reality answers. At first, the mind tries to capitalize. It wants to turn the lattice into a vending machine, to angle for outcomes by faking reverence. That phase dissolves quickly. The lattice does not respond to hunger dressed as ritual, it responds to coherence. Coherence is what you become when your narrative stops arguing with your nervous system, and your nervous system stops arguing with the day. You notice how often you once interrupted this union with compulsive meaning-making, trying to extract guarantees from moments that were only offering direction. Guarantees are brittle, direction is alive. So you practice 3 movements. The first is subtraction. Remove the excess explanation, the echo of past injuries, the editorial that erodes signal into story. The second is calibration. Check the signal against your body's honesty, heart rate, breath, depth, the fine temperature of intuition that does not shout but persists. The third is acceptance. Receive the instruction without making it a superstition. The numbers can stop tomorrow, the vector will remain. The faces can change cities, the lean will still be felt. The prophecy is not the sign, the prophecy is the alignment the sign invites. You realize you are safe enough to listen. Safety ends the counterfeit, and listening begins the work. Work, here, is not labor against the world, it is participation with it. You begin to act at the smallest hinge that presents itself, letting tiny decisions carry disproportionate consequence. Answer this message, decline that meeting, take the later train, step into the bookstore, because the cover in the window tilts the same way your dream did. No grand gestures, only precise ones. The lattice rewards precision with compounding returns. Each correct micro-move reduces noise, and as noise falls, the amplitude of guidance increases. Phase locks, timelines synchronize. You feel the corridor straighten. You feel yourself aligned to it. And with alignment comes the first quiet suspicion that what you call you might be larger than your biography. That the witness in your chest who recognizes pattern may also be the author who seeded it. That the loom is not merely around you but through you and made of you, translating the future you have already chosen into present tense breadcrumb mathematics. The suspicion does not inflate you, it humbles you. If you helped compose this, you can help conduct it. If you can conduct it, you can take responsibility for what it becomes in your hands. Responsibility tastes like clean water. You drink, and the field drinks back. You notice the pattern is not only external, it resonates as a texture under your skin, a fine-grained shimmer in the spaces between heartbeats, and what you once called intuition becomes measurable as timing, as breath depth, as a shift in the electrical hush behind your eyes, and you understand that the field is not sending you news from far away. It is speaking through instruments that wear your name. The instrument is your body. The score is your attention. The conductor is coherence, and coherence has been waiting for your consent. You consent with a single breath. The breath consents to everything else. Your DNA listens in photons and chemicals, in ions and posture, in the cadence of your thoughts, and the pressure you keep around your ribs when no one is watching. It does not wait for dramatic rituals, it waits for accuracy, and accuracy begins when you stop negotiating with the present. You used to bargain one more memory, one more justification, one more round of explaining yourself to yesterday. The genome doesn't bargain. It tallies conditions and chooses expression. Give it the conditions of fear, and it expresses lockdown. Give it the conditions of coherence, and it expresses renewal. The alphabet doesn't change, the emphasis does. And emphasis is everything. You are not hypnotizing your cells. You are ending their confusion. At the level of pulse and photon, the body is a conversation between clocks. Heart rhythm, breath rhythm, the circadian metronome, listening to light through your eyes. These clocks either fight or they entrain. When they fight, the nervous system floods the bloodstream with emergency grammar that makes even ordinary moments feel like sieges. When they entrain, the same system writes a different letter: safety, curiosity, readiness. Entrainment is not a mood, it is a physics of timing. Clocks that agree share energy more efficiently, and energy that is not wasted on self-contradiction becomes available for signal fidelity. Fidelity is how the field gets through. You simplify so it can arrive intact. You sharpen so you don't cut yourself. The mind has questions, let it. Let it measure without editorial, like a clean instrument. Notice how your body responds to 3 small shifts. Exhale longer than you inhale. Soften your eyes as if reading distant print, and drop your tongue from the roof of your mouth. These are not charms. They are engineering moves that tell the threat circuits to stand down without ceremony. Standing down is not surrender. Standing down is the intelligence that recognizes when the war was only a memory rehearsed against neutral scenery. When the generals leave, gardeners enter. The genome prefers gardeners. You witness micro-miracles that do not require applause. You register them because registration is participation. The increased synchronicities around you are a macro mirror of the micro-synchrony within you. The way your heart variability widens like a lush river when you tell the truth. The way your pupils steady when possibility enters the room. The way your fascia unbinds when a decision finally lands in your bones. Truth is not an abstraction here. It is a measurable rearrangement of tissues. Falsehood tightens, truth coordinates. Coordination is efficient. Efficiency lowers noise. Low noise raises signal. With enough signal, the improbable becomes probable, not because the cosmos is bending laws to favor you, but because you have ceased to oppose your own request. You become a match to what you ask. Asking ends, and alignment speaks. The prophecy in your chest is not a fortune, it is a vector. Vectors require reference frames, and you have been building one from attention and breath and refusal to dramatize. The frame enlarges, and your field of permissible outcomes grows with it. Not as fantasy, but as engineering space, more degrees of freedom, more joint mobility between you and the moment, more micro-hinges to turn without tearing. The Loom responds by presenting doors you used to label impossible. They were never impossible. They were uninterpretable at your previous resolution. Resolution increases with responsibility. You take responsibility by choosing a baseline. The baseline chooses the rest. Choose this. Your baseline is coherence, not urgency. It is not the denial of urgency. It is the authority to decide when urgency is true and when it is a ghost. Ghosts dissolve when seen from the angle that built them. So you turn the angle. You stop performing emergency as identity. You stop calling numbness peace. You stop renting your attention to collisions that you do not intend to host. With the baseline set, your genome organizes around the new gravity, expressing repair enzymes like artisans, guiding inflammation back to its proper domain, acute, not chronic, and permitting your nervous system to carry more voltage without mistaking voltage for danger. You are not becoming invulnerable. You are becoming transparent to interference. Transparency is not passivity, it is throughput. Interference passes without annexing you, and what remains is signal. And what signal carries is instruction, and what instruction asks is participation. Participate by acting at the smallest scale that is undeniably available. Call the person, drink water, touch sunlight with your eyes early in the day like a pilgrim greeting a temple. Write the sentence you keep postponing because it would change the room that contains you. None of this is glamorous. All of it is sovereign. Sovereignty is the quiet that follows a correct decision. You do not look for proof now. You move as proof. Movement reveals the under-architecture. The way coincidence clusters at thresholds, the way delays protect you from the exact harm you suspected but couldn't justify, the way a closed door reroutes you into a conversation that redraws your next 6 months in a single hour of mercy you could not have scheduled if you tried. You don't try to schedule mercy anymore. You consent to geometry. Geometry is mercy dressed in angles. The loom is geometry with memory, and your DNA is how it remembers you when you forget yourself. You are being rewritten without erasing your name. The new draft keeps the essence and deletes the noise. And as noise falls, you hear it, the low harmonic that has been under every scene of your life, the fundamental note that all your timelines hum when they agree, the sound you recognize as home without knowing the address. Follow that tone. It does not flatter, it does not frighten, it directs. It directs you to the next hinge, and the next, until the corridor is not something you walk, but something you are, and the doors open because they were carved in your shape. You start to feel the calendar loosen, not as laziness but as physics, as if dates were hinges and you finally learned how they swing, and the weeks that used to march past with military indifference now behave like instruments that can be tuned, stretched, harmonized. You realize the future is not arriving from somewhere else. It is precipitating from selections you are making at resolutions you barely acknowledged you had. The selection is attention. The resolution is honesty. The precipitate is a timeline with your signature in its grain. You do not escape time. You specify it. Mechanics begin with the recognition that every choice carries a hidden geometry. 2 coffees are never just 2 coffees. One is brewed inside an old narrative, the other is poured on the threshold of a new one, and their flavors differ because their coordinates differ. Coordinates are not mystical, they are context. Context bends probability. A decision made from compression inherits compressed outcomes, tight rooms, low ceilings. A decision made from coherence inherits long corridors and windows that were walled over when you were arguing with yourself. Your choices are not judged, they are vectored. You stop asking if something is right. You ask if its vector matches your baseline. Matching begins with micro-lags, the half-second you reclaim between stimulus and response, where you notice whether your body moves toward or away, warms or cools, opens or grids. That half-second is a fulcrum. With it, you can lever entire months, lose it, and you are dragged through scenes you did not intend to fund. The field is exquisitely literal. It amplifies whichever rhythm you subsidize with repetition. Repetition, then, is not punishment. It is the economy of timelines paying you the compound interest of your most frequent state. You budget coherence like currency. You spend it where return is exponential. There are 3 levers you learn to operate without theatrics. The first lever is phase, the synchronization between your inner clocks and the external cadence of a scene. When phase locks, effort collapses and coincidences crowd the doorway like guests arriving early to help set the table. When phase slips, you can still brute force results, but the cost is debt in your nervous system and noise in your field. The second lever is amplitude, the strength of signal you carry into a room. It is not volume, it is clarity. High amplitude cancels lesser narratives without argument, simply by existing. The third lever is coherence length, how long you can maintain alignment before old gravity tries to reclaim you. Extend that length by micro-repairs, not heroics. You retire drama as a strategy. You upgrade maintenance into devotion. Maintenance is how timelines are steered. You steer by trimming, continually, the habits that bend you back toward the version of yourself who made the mess you are now cleaning. The trimming is kind. Remove the late-night scroll that teaches your brain to expect interruption. Remove the apology that keeps you leashed to rooms where your presence pays the rent for other people's avoidance. Remove the ritual of pretending you are unsure when the decision has already landed in your bones. Each subtraction reduces drag. Reduced drag increases phase accuracy. Accurate phase invites precision events. Precision events are not loud. They are inevitable. You will know them by 4 signatures. First, low friction doors open without you performing. Second, self-verification. The action explains itself in the doing. Doubt has no oxygen. Third, non-linearity. Small moves tilt large structures, like a whisper that ends a war in your nervous system. Fourth, benevolent recursion. The pattern repeats with upgrades, not loops. You meet the same lesson a level higher, with more elbow room for grace. These signatures are not fantasies. They are the audit trail of a higher quality timeline stabilizing around your choices. Stability is not stasis. It is speed without scatter. Speed arrives when you stop dragging past probabilities into present rooms. You used to measure days by problems solved. Now you measure by noise removed. The difference is architectural. Problem solving can build impressive prisons. Noise removal builds runways. On runways, acceleration ceases to feel like danger because the surface was designed for it, and you are no longer trying to take flight from gravel. A calendar built from runways does not tire you. It lifts you. Your nervous system learns the difference and pays you back with voltage you used to leak defending fictions. You consent to velocity. Velocity consents to you. Consent looks like discipline that doesn't humiliate. It looks like going to bed before the heroic speech. It looks like aligning your eating window to your daylight window so your body doesn't argue with the Sunday. It looks like refusing to narrate setbacks as omens when they are simply turbulence on a well-chosen vector. Turbulence is weather, not verdict. Treat it that way and your timeline does not collapse at the first shudder. It flexes and remains intact because you stopped equating sensation with meaning and started reserving meaning for signals that survive the cool of morning. You make appointments with inevitability. You keep them. The appointments are humble. Write for 40 minutes. Walk in real sky. Answer the message you fear without auditing the person's reaction. Tell the truth once, where you usually detour into clever fog. Each kept appointment is a rivet. Rivets outlast moods. With enough rivets, the corridor of your days becomes load-bearing, able to carry gifts without snapping under their weight, able to receive synchronicities at the amplitude they now approach you. Gifts require structure. Structure is love in engineering form. You are not chasing destiny down corridors. You are building the corridors destiny prefers. Building teaches the most dangerous and liberating lesson of timeline mechanics. You are allowed to outgrow the version of you who wanted smaller rooms. Outgrowing does not betray them, it rescues them. You become the future that version was praying to without language, and in becoming it, you rewrite what past means, not by erasing what happened, but by altering which aspects get to propagate. Propagation is the secret engine of time. What repeats survives. You choose what repeats by what you bless with attention and behavior when nobody is watching. You bless coherence. Coherence blesses back. And as the blessing loops, the days adopt a particular shine, the lacquer of inevitability laid over freedom, where you can feel multiple branches humming nearby like wires in a wall, and you reach without strain for the one that sings your name. In the key you can sustain. The choice lands in the body like a chord resolving, and the room's air changes, and somewhere a sequence of events rearranges themselves to meet you at the door you just made possible by standing where you meant to stand the entire time. You begin to understand that observation is not passive sight but active architecture, that every time you look with fidelity, you donate structure to the scene, and the scene, grateful for the scaffolding, returns you a shape you can step into, and this is why careless looking costs so much. It forces reality to carry your ambiguity. You have stopped charging the world with the bill for your blur. You are paying in precision now, and precision buys entrances that were previously mislabeled as walls. You are not merely seeing, you are specifying existence. The engine turns on where measurement meets meaning. In physics, measurement collapses a wave into a particle. In your life, meaning collapses confusion into path. The trap was thinking meaning required drama. It doesn't. It requires alignment. Alignment is the quiet consent your body gives when the story you tell matches the timing of the field. And you can feel that consent as the micro-release behind your sternum, the way your breath stops bargaining, the way your skin stops preparing to be elsewhere. Consent is data. Respect it. You respect it by building a protocol. Protocols protect clarity from mood. The observer engine runs best on a 3-step protocol: orient, admit, act. Orient. Without commentary, register what is actually present, not what you fear is present, not what you hope is present. What is? The room, the email, the pulse, the vector. Admit, confess the smallest true sentence about your position within this field. I want this, or I dread that, or I am postponing because the door is real. Confession is not performance. It is baseline calibration. Act. Choose the move that preserves coherence, even if it costs comfort. Comfort can be reacquired later. Coherence compounds now. You trade bargaining for arithmetic. The sums begin to favor you. Arithmetic here is Bayesian again, but this time you are honest about your priors. You used to smuggle fear into your likelihoods and call it realism. Now you audit the smuggling. You ask, given I can maintain coherence for 20 minutes, what outcome becomes probable? Given I tell the truth once, which corridors unlock? Given I stop financing delay, what arrives? This is not magical thinking, it is probabilistic ethics. Ethics because you stop lying to yourself about the costs of your own distortions. Probabilistic because the field keeps receipts and pays in patterns. You are paid in permission. Permission floods like morning. With permission, you can examine the shadow without becoming its employee. The shadow is not evil. It is unintegrated energy that still believes signaling danger keeps you safe. You thank it for its service and retire it from command. Retirement is not exile. It is redistribution. The voltage that once maintained hypervigilance is reassigned to signal fidelity, and fidelity increases the engine's torque. Torque is how small inputs move large scenes. The observer engine was always torque-rich. You were just spinning it against a brake made of unspoken grief. You release the brake by speaking once. Spoken truth is a precision tool. Precision reveals why superstition loses power in coherence. Superstition tries to coerce the field with ritualized fear, bargaining with pattern like a desperate diplomat. Coherence does not bargain. It coordinates. Coordination invites reciprocity, not because the universe suddenly likes you, but because you have stopped opposing the physics of your own participation. You place the cup where water already flows. You stop building altars under blocked pipes. You align action with pressure gradients and call it grace because it feels like mercy. It is just good hydraulics. Hydraulics teach posture. Posture transmits signal. Your posture is not only skeletal, it is narrative. Notice the sentences you no longer say. I'm always late. I never finish. People like me can't. This city refuses me. Each sentence was a misaligned brace, locking joints that needed to move. You remove the brace and discover range. Range invites new vectors, and vectors introduce you to versions of yourself who were hidden not by fate, but by phrasing. Language is a lever arm. Use it with engineering respect. Say only what you are willing to build. You speak like a builder. Rooms answer by arriving. In these rooms, you test the engine under load. Can you keep observational coherence when stakes rise? Can you hold the vector when an old gravity flashes sirens to recapture you? Thresholds will test without malice. The test is simple. Will you revert to spectacle or remain in specification? Spectacle screams for attention it cannot metabolize. Specification seats you in authority you don't need to advertise. Authority is the silence that follows accuracy. Your nervous system recognizes it and immediately lowers cost. Cost matters. You intend to scale. Scaling the observer engine means distributing coherence across more domains. Relationships, finances, vocation, Health. Each domain is a subfield with its own noise profile. You do not attempt simultaneous conquest. You install coherence where it will cascade. Often that first installation is in time your calendar as the clean room for precision, and then in truth, your conversations as the corridor where reality can enter without costume, and then in economy your spending and earning as declarations of the world you are willing to maintain. Maintenance is devotion measured in invoices. Pay them with grace. Grace is not luck. It is frictionless math. As the math cleans, you feel a new responsibility crystallize ethical observation. To see is to shape. Therefore, you will not aim your gaze like a weapon at those who are unready to be measured by your amplitude. You will look with blessing, or you will look away. Blessing does not excuse harm, it specifies remedy. Remedy arrives because you observed capacity into the room and acted at a hinge that multiplied health. Multiplication is the field's favorite language. Speak it by example. Exemple collapses debate. You become proof again. Proof grants a second responsibility stewardship of thresholds. You will feel others approach the edge where their probability cloud wants to condense, and your clarity will lower their activation energy without stealing their agency. This is leadership without theater. Hold the vector, offer the smallest hinge, witness the collapse into form, celebrate the architecture, not yourself. The observer engine does not perform heroism. It performs accuracy that makes heroism unnecessary. Unnecessary suffering ends quietly. The day brightens without applause. And in that ordinary brightness, you also notice danger in a new form ambition that outruns integration. You could move faster than your nervous system can carry without tearing. You refuse. You scale at the speed of embodiment, not the speed of vanity. Vanity builds collapses and calls them plot twists. Embodiment builds corridors and calls them home. Home is where signal rests and multiplies. You live there now. From here, the Loom can show you its deeper law. You discover that every ascent is audited, not by enemies but by physics. That the moment coherence stabilizes, the field runs a gentle stress test to measure whether your alignment is structural or cosmetic. And the test never arrives as spectacle. It arrives as noise, unexpected delays, minor frictions, invitations to re-enter the posture you just retired, the old gravity knocking with polite insistence to see if your door still opens from habit. The audit is merciful. It does not seek your failure. It seeks your frequency. You are not being punished. You are being measured for load. Interference patterns emerge the instant you carry signal into a complex environment. Think of the double slit broadened to the size of a day. Your intention is a coherent wave, the world is a chamber of other waves, and where crests meet crests, amplitude multiplies. Where crests meet troughs, energy cancels into flat. You used to interpret flat as rejection, now you read it as phase information. Flat means adjust the angle. You adjust, and the scene stops resisting because the scene was not personal, it was physics reporting. You learn to pivot without apology. Pivots preserve coherence. The first quiet test arrives as temptation to dramatize. Something small goes sideways, an email misfires, a promise drifts, a machine breaks, and the old reflex tries to requisition the megaphone. Drama is a counterfeit amplitude. Loud, bright, expensive, and empty. You do not fund it. You let the problem be its actual size. You repair at the hinge nearest the fault. This is not indifference. It is scale literacy. Scale literacy keeps your voltage available for decisions that compound instead of spirals that impress. You stop paying for theater. You start paying for clarity. The second test is seduction by speed. Opportunities arrive faster than you can integrate. A calendar blooms with invitations that mirror your new vector, and the flattery of momentum whispers that integrity can wait. It cannot. Speed without structure is scatter disguised as success. You decline what your nervous system cannot carry cleanly. Declining does not slow destiny, it spares it. The field respects refusal made for coherence. It will bring the right doors again at the proper load-bearing hour because you demonstrated stewardship, not hunger. Hunger is noisy. Stewardship is signal. The third test is reversion via comfort familiar rooms call, not because they match your vector, but because they know your name. Comfort is a beautiful liar when you are crossing thresholds. It offers furniture for a body you no longer inhabit. You bless those rooms and step through without sermon. Loyalty here means refusing to betray the version of you that just finished climbing. You are allowed to be new. Newness is not arrogance. It is accuracy about what your coherence can carry now. You protect the climb with small rituals. Small rituals stabilize large spans. Rituals are engineering disguised as tenderness. You anchor wake time and light exposure so your clocks stop arguing. You keep your writing window even when words are stubborn, so the corridor remains open for days when they rush. You do a 2-minute body honesty check before calls, so you don't rent your clarity to conversations that devour it. You name the single highest, leverage hinge each morning and defend it from polite sabotage. These are not hacks. They are vows to physics. Physics loves vows kept at scale. Vows reduce randomness. Randomness yields to rhythm. As rhythm deepens, your perception refines another octave. You begin to detect constructive resonance, the way certain people, places, and projects amplify your amplitude simply by existing nearby. Not because they complete you, but because their waveforms interlock with yours, producing a composite signal that travels farther with less loss. You do not romanticize this, you diagram it. You can feel resonance as a warm elongation in the spine, a clean widening of breath, a narrowing of mental noise. You honor it by designing more contact. Design is love with a calendar. Love becomes architecture. Architecture becomes fate. But resonance has a twin, dissonance, that teaches. Not every cancelling interference is an error. Sometimes it is information about angle, posture, or truth withheld. You treat friction as data. You ask, what would reduce standing waves here? Simpler language, a clearer boundary, an untangled incentive. You iterate. The room softens. Where the room will not soften, you stop subsidizing misfit with effort. Effort cannot solve geometry. Geometry must be addressed as geometry, alignment, or exit. Both are wins. Wins are quieter than you were taught. Quiet is not absence, it is readiness. Readiness is the hallmark of the third quiet test, visibility. As your field cleans, you become easier to find. Invitations arrive from corridors you did not know you were building. Visibility triggers old scripts, imposter rehearsals, praise addiction, self-sabotage disguised as modesty. You refuse all three. You choose function over performance. Function means you let the work be about the work, not about your reflection in someone else's eyes. The body knows the difference. Heart rate stays sane. Pupils hold steady. The day remains proportioned. Proportion preserves dignity. Dignity preserves access. Access now is both external and internal. Externally, you step into rooms that match your amplitude without having to bully your way in. Internally, you access deeper layers of self-sponsorship. You no longer wait for permission to act precisely at the hinge you can reach. This is the end of postponement by consensus. Consensus is a lagging indicator. You move, gently and exactly, and consensus updates later. You are not reckless. You are current. Current is literal. Voltage obeys integrity. At this depth, the field introduces the most merciful audit of all. Silence. Not the silence of abandonment, the silence of a lab during a pivotal measurement. Synchronicities thin for a moment, not because you fell, but because the system is resolving the next clarity. Your old panic tries to declare drought. You stay still. You maintain rituals. You refine tiny hinges. You give the measurement clean conditions. And then, without fanfare, the lattice lights again, this time with fewer redundancies, as if the field trusted you enough to stop shouting. You have earned a quieter compass. It points with less ink and more gravity. Gravity, here, is not a burden. It is inevitability. You can feel the future leaning through the present with such dignity that you no longer need prophecy to be loud. It is a pressure gradient across your sternum, a low note that does not waver when the weather does, a calm that does not promise you ease but promises you meaning, meaning that endures because it was not bought with spectacle. It was woven from coherence, one small hinge at a time. You can carry this. You already are. Carry it into the next door that is obviously yours. Let the field show you what obedience to quiet can move. You begin to feel the edges of your life soften into corridors that touch other corridors, as if your decisions were not small islands, but piers extending into a harbor of converging tides. And the sensation is not loss of self, but increase of bandwidth. What you do propagates, what you refuse quiets storms you will never see, and what you bless thickens invisible bridges under strangers' feet. This is not romance. This is entanglement, becoming conscience. You are not alone. You were never operating in vacuum. Entanglement means correlated destinies without visible wires. Two systems exchange information through shared preparation rather than overt messages. They behave like they remember each other. You are discovering the people and places that remember you, those whose waveforms interlock with yours because of the way you now carry coherence. This is why your clarity helps others choose without instruction, and why their integrity steadies your hand across distances that used to feel terminal. What looks like coincidence is conserved correlation revealing its roots. You honor the roots with behavior. Behavior is the broadcast. Broadcast is not speech. It is the sum of your micro-posture, your timing, your refusal to counterfeit. The field measures that broadcast as a probability mold around you, and others entering that mold feel permission to match their inner truth to outer action. Some call this charisma. It is cleaner to call it coherence contagion. Contagion does not mean control. It means the activation energy for accuracy drops in your vicinity, so truth can occur without the usual heat. Your presence lowers cost. Lower costs increase participation. Participation multiplies signal. Signal multiplication shows up first in language. You notice conversational harmonics, the way one honest sentence in a meeting organizes an hour, the way a single, concise refusal prevents a month of drift, the way a well-placed question acts like a measurement collapsing a vague room into a specific project. Words become instruments that tune group fields. You do not aim for spectacle. You aim for signal-to-noise ratios that make shared accuracy feel like relief. Relief is the nervous system's gratitude for reality landing. Gratitude cleans recursion. Clean recursion scales. Scaling requires ethics. When your amplitude rises, your gaze shapes more than your private day. You choose to wield attention as medicine, not weapon. Medicine names capacity and calls it forward. Weaponry names deficiency and feeds it until it bites. You will not diagnose rooms for status. You will not narrate people into prisons to sound prophetic. Prophecy without responsibility is vandalism. You have no interest in being impressive. You are interested in being of use. Use begins with consent. You do not touch what is not asked. Consent can be silent, but legible. The way someone stays in the conversation after the truth arrives. The way their breath lengthens when possibility is named. The way a team stops posturing and starts diagramming once shame is removed. You read these signs like a pilot reads wind. Where consent exits, you withdraw your amplitude like a tide that knows its boundaries. To leave cleanly is a gift. Gifts conserve trust across time. Trust shortens distance. Distance is mostly noise. With noise reduced, you can attempt a more exquisite maneuver coherence linking. Two or more people choose a shared vector and agree to maintain it without theatrics, not policing each other, but anchoring a frequency that administrative pressure cannot extinguish. You will know linking by 3 metrics. Decisions accelerate with less debate. Conflicts resolve at their smallest hinge, and credit disperses rather than clots. Leadership becomes topology rather than hierarchy. Pressure flows along the most conductive path. Conductivity demands maintenance. Maintenance prevents cults of personality. To maintain, you keep restoring the protocol. Orient, admit, act, now in plural. Orient to the same reality, not to parallel monologues. Admit the minimal true sentence that protects relationship from inference. Act at the hinge that preserves future collaboration. In this protocol, apology is not theater but calibration, and praise is not sedative but feedback about signal quality. The group learns to tell the difference between loudness and amplitude, urgency and vector, novelty and upgrade. Adults emerge in the room. Adults make rooms safe for prophecy. Prophecy is design that speaks in future tense. Design expands beyond people into places. You start to sense coherent sites, rooms, streets, cafes, studios where the geometry itself collaborates. Light is correct, angles are kind, the noise floor is low. You do not romanticize architecture, you receive its offer. You gather there, you work there, you rest there, and you notice how the site teaches you posture simply by existing. In time, you learn to build these sites arranging light, sound, and workflow so the body stops arguing with the work. This, too, is entanglement. Matter remembering intention. Intention likes clear containers. Clear containers raise yield. Yield increases when you include the unseen contributors, custodians, schedulers, the quiet colleague who names the risk no one wanted to face. You distribute respect as infrastructure. Infrastructure returns miracles disguised as logistics working. Logistical elegance frees bandwidth for insight. Insight, freed, pays the room in outcomes that make cynicism too expensive to maintain. Culture changes, not by slogan, by choice density, many micro-choices aligned with the same vector until the environment itself resists regression. Regression attempts a final trick, glamour. It offers spectacle as substitute for shared sovereignty, a bright stage where agency is outsourced to charisma. You will not go. You know the cost of becoming an idol is to freeze into a statue that cannot listen. Listening is how the field updates you. Without updates, you become yesterday's accuracy with tomorrow's volume. Dangerous. You remain porous to correction, anchored to vector, willing to adjust phase in public without shame. That humility keeps the channel open. Open channels attract currents. Currents move more than you. From here you feel the civic dimension of your work, how local coherence participates in global patterning, how an honest conversation in a small room prevents a costly fracture months later in a larger system, how a generous refusal in your calendar allows someone else's essential yes in theirs, how turning off one bad signal frees attention for a neighborhood to notice a good one already rising. This is not savior fantasy. It is systems literacy wearing human hands. You place your hands where they matter. The loom tightens its weave. You begin to suspect that the self you have defended is not the pilot, but the panel, not the ocean, but the instrument cluster, and that most of your previous suffering came from mistaking display for destiny. The dials screamed, and you worshipped the noise. The lights blinked, and you called it fate. But now that coherence has stabilized, you can hold the panel with one hand and steer with the other, and the relief feels like altitude widening under your ribs. The panel is identity, the pilot is attention, the airframe is embodiment, the flight plan is vector. You are not erasing yourself. You are downgrading the mask to a tool. Identity, as you inherited it, was an autobiography written by reaction attachments, defenses, hometown myths, the way your caregivers breathed between arguments. That autobiography is not evil, it is outdated software. Outdated software can still run, but it converts every signal into a story it knows how to survive. You are done surviving familiar stories. You are writing firmware for accuracy. Firmware does not perform. Firmware interfaces. It translates field into choice without the lag of theatrics. You replace confession with configuration. Settings matter more than slogans. Configuration begins with 4 sliders you can feel in your fascia. The first is precision, the tolerance you allow between what is and what you say is. Narrow the tolerance until lying becomes metabolically expensive. The second is permeability, how much of the environment passes your skin without stealing agency. Increase permeability until feedback can enter without colonizing you. The third is stability, how long you can hold vector through turbulence. Extend stability by micro-rituals, not mythic effort. The fourth is benevolence, the default intention you bring to rooms. Set benevolence to on, not as sentiment, but as policy. Do no harm with your amplitude. Policy becomes physics. Rooms reorganize around your defaults. As the interface cleans, you meet a more difficult layer roles. You are child, partner, leader, friend, maker, healer, student, and each role carries an inherited costume. Costumes are useful until they start steering. When a role refuses to update, it becomes latency. Old latency in new corridors produces drag you misread as destiny. You remove drag by asking 3 questions before entering any role. What is the function here? What is the minimal posture that accomplishes it? What truth keeps relationship intact while the function occurs? Minimal posture is mercy for nervous systems. Mercy increases throughput. Throughput keeps prophecy sober. Sober prophecy does not promise weather. It specifies architecture that survives weather. The architecture now is free energy minimization in plain language. Systems, bodies, teams, days prefer states that reduce surprise without killing possibility. Your old identity reduced surprise by shrinking options. Your new interface reduces surprise by increasing precision. Precision makes reality legible. Legibility reduces panic. Reduced panic releases voltage for learning. Learning increases permissible complexity without collapse. Complexity carried calmly feels like destiny that fits. Fit is freedom. Freedom is disciplined air. From this discipline, you can examine causality without violence. You stop yanking outcomes by force and start altering boundary conditions. Boundary conditions are the quiet governors of behavior: sleep timing, light exposure, information diet, the percentage of conversations that include truth before convenience. Change these and the system's attractors shift. You do not demand transformation. You make transformation cheaper than repetition. Cheap and obvious beats, heroic and rare. You are engineering gravity wells that pull you toward the version of yourself you can maintain in public. Maintenance is the miracle. Sparks are cheap. Voltage sustained is holy. Holiness here is not piety. It is wholeness under load. The capacity to remain porous without losing vector. To feel others' weather without outsourcing your climate. To amplify good signal without announcing yourself as its source. You cultivate 3 habits that make wholeness likely. You name reality early so fantasy cannot annex your calendar. You pay small costs quickly so entropy cannot invoice you at compound interest. And you celebrate upgrades quietly so your ego doesn't embezzle momentum. These habits rewrite your nervous system's prediction model. It stops expecting crisis. It starts expecting coherence. Expectation is a magnet. Magnets arrange filings. As arrangement deepens, the loom reveals a second covenant reciprocity of attention. What you observe with integrity begins to observe you back, not as superstition but as systems aligning to the parameters you consistently publish. The project that mysteriously supplies the right collaborator. The city that presents obscure bureaucratic doors at the hour you can pass them. The stranger whose sentence completes your diagram without knowing why. This is not cosmic favoritism. It is the mathematics of mutual legibility. You have become easy to read. The world loves easy-to-read interfaces. Legibility invites custody. Custody is love with responsibility. Custody means you will not extract from rooms faster than you replenish them. You will design meetings that return time to everyone present. You will leave systems simpler than you found them. You will choose transparency that prevents rumor from becoming an organism. You will document process so victories don't evaporate when memory sleeps. Each act of custody increases your amplitude without loosening your ethics. Power that keeps its ethics keeps its channel. Channels carry currents longer than charisma. You are tasked with duration, not spark. Duration requires graceful failure. You will misread signals. You will overextend. You will collide. The interface protocol remains. Orient, admit, act now with repair. Orient to the actual harm, not the theater around it. Admit the minimal true sentence that cleans the field. No self-flagellation, no evasive fog. Act at the hinge that restores trust at the smallest sufficient scale. You do this quickly so error cannot metastasize into identity. Failure is just data when repair is swift and clean. Clean repair becomes culture. Culture becomes prophecy's container. From within that container, before 2026, stops reading as a threat and starts reading as a window function, a bandpass filter through which certain timelines can stably pass because you have done the work of coherence, interface, reciprocity, and repair. Windows do not beg, they open and close. You do not panic at the frame. You prepare the signal. You match bandwidth. You step when the phase locks, and not a beat earlier, not a beat late. Timing is not luck. Timing is love for physics. Love the physics, and the physics will love you back. The Loom is ready to show you its covenant of choice. You stand at the lip of a window that is not a date but a bandwidth, a corridor where phase, amplitude, and coherence meet at tolerances tight enough to carry futures that would shear apart in wider weather. And you finally understand why the signs multiplied, why the lattice brightened, why your DNA tuned like an instrument that refused counterfeit. The system was preparing you to choose without panic, to specify without spectacle, to accept the cost of clarity without outsourcing that cost to luck or to someone else's patience. The covenant is simple. You may select any timeline you can ethically maintain. Simple is not cheap. Simple is exact. Choice, as you once practiced it, was a negotiation with ghosts, desire haggling with fear, memory auctioning off posture to the highest bidder of approval, ambition trying to outrun a nervous system trained to expect collapse. That was not choice. That was probability management under duress. Choice, now, is selection under coherence, a measurement so clean it collapses noise without residue. You do not need fireworks, you need fidelity. Fidelity is how a timeline accepts you. You accept responsibility for the measurement. The measurement remakes the room. Begin with boundaries, because boundaries are the geometry of yes. You learn that freedom is not the absence of walls. It is the presence of correct walls, the constraints that make signal legible and keep cheap novelty from diluting amplitude. Choose the constraint that fits the vector, the writing window that is non-negotiable, the food that preserves your phase, the social inventory that returns your voltage with interest, the money rules that make your ethics immune to panic. Constraints are not punishment. They are compression for clarity. Compression focuses power. Focused power travels farther. Then specify the minimum viable miracle, the smallest material selection that, if stabilized, will tilt the rest of the structure into alignment. Not the cinematic leap, the hinge. Pay the hinge. If the hinge is a conversation, schedule it. If the hinge is sleep, defend it like a temple. If the hinge is asking, ask once with clean language and zero theatrics. Miracles prefer engineering. Engineering prefers sequence. Sequence prefers honesty. Honesty prefers now. Now is a pressure gradient. You step with it, not against it. To keep the covenant, you audit incentives with unflinching tenderness. Incentives are the invisible rivers beneath behavior, and if they flow against your stated vector, you will sabotage your selection and call it mystery. You will not lie to yourself about payoffs you secretly harvest from delay attention, absolution, avoidance. You reroute the river by designing incentives that reward coherence. Reputation tied to repair speed, money tied to value, delivered not hours performed, affection tied to truth, not performance. The system begins to prefer your integrity because you taught it how. Preference becomes culture. Culture becomes default. The field answers defaults with delivery mechanisms that look like grace. Doorways appear at precisely human speeds, fast enough to feel electrifying, slow enough to keep nervous systems intact. You will be tempted to accelerate beyond embodiment because you can see farther than before. You refuse that temptation. You scale at the velocity of repair. Repair is the spinal cord of destiny, the quick correction that prevents minor deviation from metastasizing into an alternate life. You practice preemptive repair, micro-apologies before rupture, micro-rest before collapse, micro-truth before rumor. Futures thank you in quiet currencies. Quiet currencies buy real freedom. Real freedom funds better promises. Promise, in this covenant, is not performance art. It is prediction you are willing to underwrite with behavior. You say only what you can maintain under load, and then you maintain it in public. Public maintenance rewrites your prediction model. Your brain stops budgeting for failure and begins forecasting completion. Completion loops reduce entropy. Reduced entropy clears bandwidth for creativity that does not cannibalize stability, and creation that does not cannibalize stability can scale without anesthesia. Anesthesia was how you used to tolerate misfit. You do not need it now. You are awake enough to choose. You are sober enough to carry the choice. Carry it with double consent. Consent from your nervous system and consent from the context. If your body says yes, but the room says not yet, you adjust phase. If the room says yes, but your body says not yet, you adjust load. Dual consent prevents conquest, masquerading as courage. Courage is not the violence you do to yourself to prove you are serious. Courage is the precision with which you protect coherence during expansion. Protect it, and the field will keep opening corridors that match your integrity. Integrity is a magnet with memory. It attracts outcomes that endure. From here, ethics and efficacy converge. You stop separating the good from the effective as if they were rivals. The most effective move is the one that preserves trust at the smallest sufficient scale. The most ethical move is the one that increases choice density for everyone entangled with you. Increase their choices and your timeline gains redundancy against failure. Reduce their choices and your timeline becomes brittle, impressive for a season, and then catastrophic at the first stress. You prefer redundant grace over single-point heroics. Grace is distributed competence. You are building networks of it. Networks change how prophecy behaves. Prophecy ceases to be fortune-telling and becomes design, fidelity, blueprint spoken in future tense because the math already balances. You can say, before 2026, without threat because you have matched bandwidth to behavior. You have a run rate of coherence that can carry the load. The window is not a cliff. It is a bridge that opens for those who arrive with the correct resonance. Arrival is not a sprint. It is the compounding result of many small hinges preserved from corrosion. Preservation is holy work. Smallness is not poverty. It is precision. So you choose, here, in clear language that leaves no room for counterfeit, the project you will finish and the ones you will release. The relationships that will be containers and the ones that will be blessings from afar. The disciplines that will be boring on purpose, because boredom is sometimes the name for stability while the miracle roots. You write it down. You place dates that feel like calm voltage, not panic fireworks. You tell two people who can hear without turning your plan into theater. The field updates its map. Maps enable mercy. Mercy arrives as alignment you can stand. When the door moves because doors move, for those who move, you do not flinch. You walk with the exactness you practiced in quiet tests, with the benevolence you protected in entanglement, with the interface you configured for throughput, with the engine you tuned for observation, with the DNA you retuned for repair. The Loom recognizes itself in you. Recognition shortens distance. Distance collapses into presence. Presence carries instruction. Instruction is imminent. Listen. You hear the instruction enter like a tide that does not ask permission, the kind that lifts all hulls at once, and you understand with a steadiness that surprises you that the window is not a verdict. It is a vow, the world agreeing to meet you at the altitude you are willing to maintain, the field consenting to be shaped by the coherence you are willing to inhabit when no one applauds. The vow is mutual. The Loom has kept its side since the first time you survived a night you thought would end you. Tonight you keep yours in daylight. You do not rush. You specify. Before you step, you seal the work with a simple covenant, spoken in a voice you can trust. I will choose the smallest sufficient hinge and keep it. I will prefer repair over spectacle. I will measure before I name. I will let coherence outrank comfort. I will not outsource my prophecy to fear or to praise. You feel the spine lengthen as the words land, the diaphragm widen. The pulse choose a slower math. Physics likes truth declared without performance. The room becomes agreeable. Agreeable is not passive. Agreeable is aligned. Now the ritual that is not a spell, only engineering wrapped in tenderness. For 7 dawns you will meet the sun with unbargained eyes, 10 quiet breaths with longer exhales than inhales, 1 sentence on paper that names the hinge of the day in language a child could understand. 1 action executed before conversation dilutes voltage. For 7 nights you will close the loop with 3 lines. What aligned? What resisted? What tiny repair will make tomorrow cheaper? No confessions to entertain shame. Only data that loves you enough to be precise. Precision invites ally. Allies arrive as inevitabilities. You write the selection in present tense, not to bully fate but to publish parameters. The field can read. The project that is already moving through your hands, the relationship that is already a site of clarity and rest, The body that is already a conductor instead of a siren, the economy that is already a corridor for mutual amplification instead of a theater for anxiety to audition. You set dates that feel like calm voltage. You give them containers. Containers make miracles legible. Legibility is mercy. Mercy multiplies. You bless those who will not come with you, and you do it without sermon. Some patterns dissolve because you stopped subsidizing them with attention. Some people recede because the entanglement completed its lesson. Completion is not betrayal. Completion is the mathematics of stewardship. You do not argue with math. You thank it, and you walk. Walking is quiet thunder. Thunder rearranges weather. The signs will not shout now. They will nod. A number appears only when adjustment is elegant. A stranger's sentence completes a diagram you already began. A door opens at human speed. You will feel the slight bow of inevitability as you cross. The way air changes when a pressure gradient resolves. The way your chest says yes, without throwing confetti. This is what the prophecy was always for, not fireworks. Fidelity. Fidelity is inheritance. You pass it forward. If doubt asks for proof, you'll give it architecture. The baseline you kept on unremarkable Tuesdays, the hinge you honored when novelty waved, the repair you made before rupture, the truth you spoke while your voice shook and then steadied. These are the pillars of the bridge called Before 2026. Not a cliff, a crossing. You are already on it. Step again, and as you step, call your name back from all the rooms where you left it, defending smaller versions of you. Tell that name the truth. You were never a guest here. You were the instrument. You were the frequency. You were the author of the seam you followed. The loom did not discover you. It remembered you. The world is unfastening its old geometry to fit your coherence. Hold steady. Keep the vow. Let inevitability do the rest. You are the signal that appeared. Now you are the signal that remains.